Hi, fourth graders. Today we're working on Unit 4, Lesson 1. In this lesson, we'll be working on naming and measuring our angles that we're studying. We have a little bit of vocabulary today in our lesson. You'll notice that we have 3 different types of angles that we'll be studying. The first is an acute angle. Now, acute angles are called acute because they're really, really cute. No, I'm just kidding. Acute angles are called that because they need to be less than 90 degrees. Now, 90 degrees is the measure of our next angle, which is a right angle. A right angle is always exactly 90 degrees. And then we have our last type of angle, which is called obtuse angle. And those angles measure more than 90 degrees. Now, the important thing to remember is that with our acute angles, they need to measure more than 0 degrees, but less than 90 degrees. Right angles are always exactly 90 degrees, which looks like this one here, where we have a right angle, but the other leg could be facing the other way as well. And then obtuse angles have to be more than 90 degrees, but less than 180 degrees. When you reach that 180 degrees, that would look like one straight line, and that's something we actually call a straight angle. So down below here, you could see some images of some example angles. This one here is less than 90 degrees, so that would be an acute. This one is a perfect 90 degrees, so that is a right angle. And this one is more than 90 degrees, so that would be an obtuse angle. So now let's talk all about our acute angles. Just kidding, they are acute angles. But because they are less than 90, which I'm going to write a reminder so we remember that, less than 90 degrees, they do have a smaller appearance. So that's how I like to remember acute, because they're so little and cute, less than 90 degrees. Now, we have a couple questions here to answer about acute angles. The first question says, how are all these acute angles alike? So talking about these 4 up here. Well, the way that they're alike is that they are all less than 90 degrees. So that actually answers our question already. Our next question asks, how is an acute angle different from a right angle? Well, acute angles are different in that they must be less than 90 degrees, whereas a right angle has to be exactly 90 degrees. So if you see any angles that look smaller than that perfect perpendicular right angle, you know you have acute angles. Now this page is all about obtuse angles. Now remember that obtuse angles are angles that are more than 90 degrees. But remember that I told you on that first slide that they're also less than 180 degrees because 180 would be a straight angle. So when we're looking at our questions, how are all of these obtuse angles alike? They're referring to these obtuse angles up above. So we have 4 examples. This one's almost a straight angle, but not quite. And this one looks like it's just a little bit more than 90. So we know that all of obtuse angles have to be more than 90 degrees. So together they'll have that in common. How are obtuse angles different from a right angle? Well, in this case, again, the question from before would match for both of these, or the answer that I had from before. They're different in that they're more than 90 degrees. A right angle has to be exactly 90. Obtuse would have to be more. Then, how are they, meaning obtuse angles, different from an acute angle? Well, obtuse angles are going to be much larger because acute angles are less than 90, whereas obtuse angles are more. So the difference there is that their measurement will be more than 90 versus an acute will be less than 90. Now we'll get some practice actually labeling these angles and giving them names based on the letters that they use as different points. So let's take a look at the directions first. To classify angles, which basically just means to tell what these angles are, it says to name each angle using the letters. Label each angle as right, acute, or obtuse. Okay, so I have two jobs here. The first job that I have is to name each angle. Well, looking at the first one here, number 6, I see that I have an angle FGH. Remember that I could label this HGF, but I could never put the G anywhere else but in the middle because that is the vertex. So I need to leave that in the middle. So remember, in order to name angles, you first lead with a little angle symbol, and then we'll do FGH. And then I'll also show you the other option, again, would be HGF. Either way, keeping the vertex G in the middle. Now, looking at the angle itself, I notice that right here, where we measure the angle, is more than 90 degrees. So in that case, this is an obtuse angle. So we've both named it and labeled that angle. So we're done classifying the first one. Next, I notice that the letters used are an X, Y, and Z, Y being the vertex, so that will need to be in the middle when I label it. To begin, I'll put out a little angle symbol, and then I'll first label it X, Y, Z. Then I'll show you the other option I could do is list Z first, then Y, and then X. Remember, keeping Y in the middle because that is our vertex. Now I notice that this angle is less than 90 degrees, so this is an acute angle. Finally, the last example, number 8, uses the letters L, M, and N M is the vertex, so that will need to be in the middle. So we could label this angle LMN or angle NML. Now, this time they've given us a nice box symbol, which remember that tells me that it is exactly 90 degrees. So this is a right angle. Down below here, I have another activity where they've given me two intersecting lines. I know they're lines because on each end we have arrows telling me that it goes on in both directions, and that term is a line in geometry. The directions here say use letters to name two acute and two obtuse angles in this figure. Label each as obtuse or acute. All right, so let's start labeling some angles that I notice in this image. So the first one that I notice, or first thing that I notice, is that E is our vertex. So that's going to be the middle point for all four angles. So I'm going to start up top with the angle AED. So I'll label that angle AED. Remember, I could also do angle DEA as long as that E is in the middle as our vertex. And that is more than 90, so that is an obtuse angle. Next, I see that I have an angle DEC right next door, so I can label that DEC, or again, I could label that angle CED, keeping the vertex E in the middle. Now this one I notice is less than 90, so that is an acute angle. Now in green, I see an angle here BEC, so I'll label that one first, and then in parentheses, name it, it could have been named angle CEB, going the other way. This one's more than 90, so that's another obtuse angle. So now I've taken care of both obtuse angles in the image. And the last one I have is the one on the left here, angle AEB. So I'll label that down on the last line. And remember, that could be labeled angle BEA as well as another option. Now that one is also less than 90, so there's my second acute angle. So now I've taken care of all the angles in our image. Now on this slide, I'm going to get some practice actually drawing and labeling some angles. So this first direction says draw and label a right angle, an acute angle, and an obtuse angle. So I'll go right in order, and I will start with the right angle. Now remember, a right angle forms a perfect perpendicular angle, so where it's 90 degrees. So I'll start by using the lines to help guide me. So in this case, I have a perfect 90-degree angle. I'll label this triangle A, B as the vertex, and C. So the label for this one would be angle ABC, or I could label it CBA. Next, right angle done. An acute angle has to be less than 90. So I'm going to do this. Now I have an angle that is less than 90 degrees. And I'll call this one EFG, with F as my vertex. So then I would label this like angle EFG. All right, acute angle done and taken care of. Obtuse angle is the last one, and that one has to be more than 90. So I'm going to give myself a little more room here. And as you can see, now we have an obtuse angle. I put a little curve in there. Sometimes you'll see that on obtuse and acute angles. There's a little curve. And let's label this one X, Y is the vertex, and Z. So then I would label this angle X, Y, Z. So now I've done both right and acute, and I've finished with an obtuse angle. Down below here, I have even more to do. This time telling me degrees versus telling me the term. So now I need to draw a 90-degree angle, which I know is a right angle. So again, I'll try to use these lines as my guide to get a perfect perpendicular angle. Okay, so that would be a 90-degree angle. Now, 45 degrees. I'm going to be teaching you in class how to use a protractor to draw them. But remember that 45 is half of 90, because if I take 45 plus 45, or if I took 45 times 2, either way, you're going to end up with 90. So if I imagine here, I'm just going to draw a 90-degree angle first, and then I kind of visualize halfway through that. That would be a 45-degree angle. So now all I have to do is go back and erase my original one that I used for the 90-degree angle, and now I've drawn approximately a 45-degree angle. I would want to use a protractor to check my measurement to make sure it was accurate. Then finally, a 180-degree angle would be a straight angle, like I told you on the first slide. So that would look like a straight line, except right in the middle, you'd have a dot where the vertex would be. So now I've completed this slide, creating a variety of different angles. For your ticket today, fourth graders, I would like you to draw and label each figure. So label with some letters and then create the symbols. Now, number 1 and number 2 are a review from Unit 2, if you remember. But if you need a reminder, just let me know. But I'd like you to draw and label a line, draw and label a ray, and then I'd like you to practice the new things we've learned today: an acute angle, an obtuse angle, and a right angle. Get started drawing.